All right, good evening, everybody. Going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Water Commission for Tuesday, July 19th to order at 6:01 p.m. We have two commissioners that are on absences tonight, and the others are present. That's Commissioner Reynolds and Commissioner Haltman. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that brings us to item number 4, the citizen comment period. Are there any citizens signed up? Excellent. We'll move on to item 5, business items. First item up for discussion, consideration, or action is the approval of minutes for the June 21st, 2022 Water Commission meeting. Those were sent out to y'all earlier. Were there any, I don't know if anybody responded with any changes, but any changes on the left? Good. On the right? Okay, no changes for the left or on the right. So can I get a motion, please?
A motion to approve minutes from.
Thank you. A motion to approve?
Second.
Have a motion approved to a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. That's all. Any opposed? Nope. All right, we'll move on to item 5B, discussions, reports, and updates for the Utility Department Monthly Activity Report. Mr. Steinmetz, please.
Good evening. For the month of June, we pumped 376. Our remainder amount of Edwards Aquifer is 376.35. We pumped 33.06 from the Edwards, which brought it to 215.11 for the year. Trinity well usage for acre feet was 110.23. For the year, it's 316.86. All of the required samples for the month required by TCEQ passed. Our water loss went down to 1%, which is a big drop. For our AMI meters, our customer automatic drafts is at 683. AMI customer portal profiles was 661, which is up 21 from last month. Total AMI notifications was 1614, 751 increase on that. We did leak detection in the Woods subdivision, no leaks detected. Currently, we are monitoring the AMI system for high water users, plus our guys are driving around the city looking for irrigators that are either irrigating past the hour or if it's not their day, so we're leaving notifications with them. We're finding a lot of pool fillers are the cause of some of the AMI notifications because it's showing a new trend or they're coming on more often than they used to, so it's detecting a trend difference. Currently, let's see where we got. As of today, we have remaining 360.49 acre feet left, and we've lost 68.32 for the year. That's all I have to report at this time.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to make a couple of comments real quick on this one. First of all, great job on the water loss. I mentioned at the council meeting, but even that 1% just because of sheer volume, but still cut down. If you look at the average of about 1,700 or so, cutting down to 500. Y'all have been doing a great job getting out there and finding those leaks. We appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to bring up there can you scroll up, please, to the lines there? Yeah. And actually, the water, can you show the water that's available a little bit? Yes, that's what I was actually looking for. when we look at this, we see the water that's available. Councilmember Valdez did a great job of sort of showing the math out here that what this is going to look like. That amount available out of the Edwards Aquifer is going to continue going down about, Stephen, I think you said 0.6 acre feet per day that we're in stage 3. Is that correct?
For stage 3, it's 0.62.
Okay. Yep, so seeing that we're in stage 3, and you've heard Stephen talk about this before, that we need 10 inches of rain probably to get out of stage 3. Obviously, that you can project out there about how much we're using and how much Edwards is going to be left out there. We're on a good line to actually have those two lines meet in December. Is that fair? Okay. I just wanted to point that out for everybody as we continue to sort of monitor our well usage, as we continue to go through the exceptional drought that we're in right now. Okay. On that note, we'll go to questions. Do you have any questions on the right?
Not so much a question, but it would help me keep everything straight if, like, right below the pumping report, see if you can scroll down, they have the water sold and metered and whatnot. It helped to have the header still on there so you can tell what each of those columns is. Just got cut off. Minor thing, but that's really it. I mean, it all looks really good to me. I don't have anything else.
Thank you, sir. On the left?
I have one kind of a comment, I guess, and that is the pumping of the Trinity. And while I really advocate conservation, there's also a concern that if the Trinity comes under an aquifer authority, that our allocated amount of water will be based on historic use. And I don't know how we balance that or use the heck out of the Trinity without using up our Edwards. But I think when they establish the authorities, a lot of the who gets what's based on historical use of the water. Just a comment.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Stone, anything? Okay.
I have one fast question. One fast question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
We're actually stage 1 in the city. I know the SAW is in stage 3. But I thought I saw on the website it was showing stage 1. That's why I was kind of looking on the trying to log into the website, see what actually stage. I know stage 1 wasn't. You're limited, but stage 3, like, one time a week and a lot more restrictive. What are we actually on? Stage 1? Stage 1?
Stage 1.
Okay. Well, I guess why are we on stage 1 versus stage 3 versus, because I'm trying to work a little heavier conservation for us, because we're going to hit later, because I'm looking at the weather report. It ain't going to get any better real soon.
Yeah. Mainly because we do have the Trinity, and it does offset a big portion of the water we use, so we didn't have to go right away. A long time ago, we used to, 15 years ago, we'd go into a stage whenever Edwards went in a stage, but that was primarily because we had Edwards water.
So Commissioner Stone, it is because we have two different sources is why we're slightly different than SAWS, which is driven off of just a single aquifer. But what I will say is that the city staff is producing daily reports, monitoring our usage and seeing if these conservation of stage 1 is taking effects. And they're looking at, they're actively going out there and monitoring folks and everything. And so we're watching it very, very closely. I get those daily reports as well as several people that are out there. So we are watching it and considering perhaps other measures.
When I'm walking the neighborhood, I keep seeing the same people watering, X amount of times a week. That's what I was kind of wondering, and I keep seeing the saws of stage 3, and, you know, there's kind of discrepancy. I was kind of wondering if we're looking at that, trying to conserve a little better.
So to be clear, everybody's only supposed to be watering on their designated day according to stage 1 water restrictions. And that goes to Stephen's point before. They're driving around, they're trying to monitor their stuff, they're letting people know. You know, he's going to keep those aggressive efforts going, and we're going to keep monitoring the situation on a day-to-day basis.
One fast question. On the water, the leakage, the 1.1, great job. Was it something that you were able to do to get it down that suddenly, that from 7% to 1% in 1 month?
Well, we catch leaks pretty quick now, but then again, the more you pump, the lower the percentage also goes down, so that's kind of in our favor also. But yeah, it's a pretty good number for what stage and everything we are with the dry weather and everything. So it's really good to see that.
Go ahead, sir.
Now it's on. All right. If I could, can I just make a couple of comments to fully answer Commissioner Stone's question, which is a really good question. We are, like Chairman Mueller said, we are working daily with reports from Stephen on exactly what we're taking out of the Edwards and what we're taking out of the Trinity. And so far, we're not seeing the trend in stage 1, now that we're roughly 3 weeks into it, that we would like to see. We're working with city staff, with Stephen, Nancy, myself, Councilmember Valdez, and Chairman Mueller to see when is the right time to go into stage 2. I think you can expect that the first week in August, and just so that we're good stewards with our water reduction measures, because the Edwards in stage 3, possibly going to stage 4 in the not too distant future. We are coming up with the worst case scenario of tracking our Edwards usage and our decline in acre feet of 0.62 acre feet a day, along with what we're taking out of the Trinity, anticipating that, you know, Edwards Aquifer could be in stage 5 by December unless something changes. So we're trying to be good stewards with that. Nothing, like Commissioner Mueller said, there's no, in stage 1, it's watering restrictions based on the last digit of your address, you know, when you can do that as far as watering with irrigation goes. The same thing is in effect for stage 2 with some other measures, and then it doesn't happen in until stage 3, if we get there, where we start increasing and putting a surcharge on the end above 45,000 gallons of usage a month per customer, so per water line. So we are looking at it daily and taking it extremely seriously. Your question was very good, and I just wanted to make sure that you and everybody else out there watching knows what we're doing and how we're tracking that. So did I answer your question fully? Chairman Mueller, anything else to add? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Were there any other questions for Mr. Steinmetz before we move on to the council meeting? Okay, we'll move on to, excuse me, item 5B2 for the city council meeting. I'm not sure how many of y'all had a chance to look through all of the stuff for the council meeting, to include the consent agenda. If you looked at the consent agenda, it's had some of our water department revenue and expenditures in there. So I would say that our revenue is slightly higher than it was at this point last year, which isn't surprising because the consumption's been up pretty high so far. And the budget was at 60%, the revenue is at 60% of the budget of the May. But bottom line is that we're kind of 3/4 way through the year and everything's looking good for the water department. And you can review that inside the city council packet is part of the consent agenda if you would like the details on that. We talked about or y'all saw the utilities report. There was a few questions from council members on there. I think actually some of the questions that y'all had were actually covered there, matter of fact. The engineer did address some comments from the utility coordinator on the 3009-2252 intersection project. After he does his coordination with the utility coordinator, I guess, then he's going to forward that final plan to council, and we can get moving on that. I think everybody noticed that the stage 1 water restrictions went out. One thing that got pointed out that I think is important, that went out via emergency alert. So I think see if I'm saying this right, any person that has their phone registered with the city got that message. Is that correct? Okay, great. Just some other items that were out there. There's 2 commissions that were stood down, the Quarry Committee and the Wildlife Committee, at the City Council meeting. And I encourage you to watch the video there to get the whole story on that was out there. Then finally, we got a lot of information about the 50th anniversary, which was very successful. 2,000-ish people, a whole lot of, there's a whole lot of, raised a lot of money in sponsorship, which helped us get to a point where we didn't have to use any city funds to have a pretty awesome party that was out there. And obviously a lot of support from all the staff that's out there, from Public Works, police, staff, everybody. It was just awesome. And there's lots of cool gear that's still for sale on the website, right? Okay. And that was it for the city. That's my notes for the city council meeting. Ms. Kane, anything to add? No. Mayor? Okay. Any questions from maybe on the left? All right. Great. That was B2. Item B3, status of the review of the leak adjustment request for 2646 Wall Lane. Who is taking that one? Is it Stephen?
I'm still waiting for them to send me some more documentation on the repairs, so I don't have anything as of today.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to hopefully get all that by next month. Are you reaching out to them and trying to get that information?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. Any questions on that? All right, we'll move over to recommendations. The first recommendation, number 1 we have, is discuss possible recommendations on the leak adjustment process. So in the, I put our recommendation that we had from last month, took that to council, and they looked at it, and there is something in your packet there for recommendations, and this got emailed out to you after the city council meeting. And so there is City Council wants us to consider adding the following items that are on your sheet of paper and on your screen. So I know we've had some discussions about these before, but all of these were items that were recommendations to perhaps add on to the current recommendation that we have. This is additive, is what I'm trying to say. All right. With that, first of all, you guys want to hit me with any questions about this and what was discussed? Over on the right. I know you got questions.
Well, as I told you before, having been on our vacation last week, hadn't had a chance to watch the video, so I'm looking for clarification on the actual tasking. Are these like suggestions they really want us to consider, or are they saying this is what we want done? I mean, how much of this is How was it phrased, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, that's a good question. So this was this was a recommendation for addition by one of the council members. And after city council discussed it, they would prefer that they didn't want to, they wanted us to look at these and see if we thought these were good ideas and come back with them with explanations on whether we should, why we should or should not have these items in there. Is that your only question, Vice Chair?
That's my question. We'll have comments when we get to that.
Okay. Any questions before we get into the discussion? Go ahead.
I was going to discuss some on here. Here.
I'm sorry?
No, we're talking about discussion on something right now, or?
Go for it. If
Okay.
you don't, there's no other
I was-
clarifying questions that need to get again.
I was kind of curious on the last one is service line long of 500 feet length. What's significant 500 is a magic cutoff or I'm trying to figure out why that certain number. Should it be longer, shorter, what? 500 is quite a long length.
So a lot of these items, when we look at these, there is a rather lengthy report that we discussed a while back when we were first looking at leak adjustment procedures, and all of these items that are in here were taken from other cities that were out there, and that all of these are to reduce the risk exposure to the city. So why 500 feet? I'm not sure. We borrowed that from another jurisdiction, but
I just wanted it should be shorter. 500 is awfully long. That's what I was wondering. You know, I can see maybe two or 300, but 500, you know, that's going to go across a couple lots possibly, depending on which direction it's going.
yeah, I think that's the point. If somebody has that long of a line, then maybe that risk should be transferred to them.
Yeah, but why 5? It just seems awfully long. We're penalizing somebody because they have a long water line to the house? I mean, how many 500-foot or 500-foot plus water lines are there in Garden Ridge? Do we know?
Okay, well, we'll come back to that one. Let's start from the top and work our way down on this thing oh, yeah, exactly. Should I just assume that everybody's good with 7, 4, 5, 6, and 7?
No.
Okay. All right, then let's go ahead and start with number 4, with
You're welcome
Roman
to.
numeral 4.
You're welcome to assume, but I think my memory is we've kind of gone over and discussed in the past programming errors, control malfunctions, and sprinkler head breakages and malfunctions. And I think we've kicked that horse around till it's dead, and I don't know, if we want, we can kick it around some more. I'm not sure where it's going.
So what we've said about this before is that, what I think we've said before is that most of our leak adjustments are due to the irrigation systems, so we didn't want to limit them since that was the majority of our adjustments. Am I saying that right?
I mean, I think that is certainly part of it. There's additional rationale behind it. I don't know how far you want to get into it right now. That's why I kind of asked my question. I mean, if this is really just, here's the list of things that were in there before, my point of view starts with the idea that that many of the other cities that we pulled these things from are not directly comparable to the Garden Ridge Water Department. And it has to do with rate structure, it has to do with our costing data, it has to do with the size of the department and the more large lot character of Garden Ridge. So that makes it a little hard to do. Other cities also manage their rates by using demand restrictions, so they have fewer tiers, and they have less marginal increase as you go up in tier, and as a consequence, they have less built-in incentive for conservation. So again, they take a different approach to leak adjustments. Been here long enough now to see this go around a couple of times, and it started with the idea of, we had, it was funded through the city general fund instead of a separate water department, and every citizen was, or every customer was entitled to one leak adjustment kind of without question each year. So the process involved simply proving that they hadn't had one before, and the council at the time was very skeptical of people taking advantage of other ratepayers for that reason. So it's kind of gone around a couple of times. Where we are right now is we have a highly curved rate structure with large marginal increases. Whether it's right or wrong, the city made the choice to emphasize conservation through pricing and not through restrictions. So as a result, there's a significant penalty on folks if they have a leak and it goes to high volumes. So the leak process was to remove that conservation incentive and charge a comparable rate. So that's kind of the background. But now, bigger picture, we don't have any idea what our cost of water is. And I've said that multiple times. It's what we know is what the expenses are, and then we average that out over a total consumption. So when we say tier 2 rates is the cost of water, it really isn't. And so the way to think about that is, let's say we had an abnormal year where we had a whole bunch of leaks and it actually increased our consumption by 30%. We'll just pick a ridiculously large number. Our water department expenses would not go up 30%. What would happen is we would spread our costs over a larger volume of water use, and average costs would actually go down. So the water department's expenses would go up, but by far less than that. Our cost of water is predominantly the electricity to pull it out of the ground and raise it to elevated storage, and the chemicals. None of those, except chemicals, are metered separately. So we really don't know what that cost is. So to me, it's a little bit unfair to categorize reasons why you could or could not have leak adjustments. Our tier 2 pricing that we give folks isn't really cheating anybody in the city, because we're still covering that average cost at tier 2 rates. So all we're really doing with our leak adjustment is removing the conservation incentive. So I don't really see any downside to that. I've heard several council meetings where people will say something that other ratepayers are subsidizing these people with leaks. That's also not true, because none of that water use would have been demanded in the absence of a leak. We just wouldn't have used it. So again, it just affects our average cost, not any recovery from our citizens, our ratepayers. So I just don't see it as a big issue. Now, the irrigation and pool usage, that's different. We could debate that a little bit. But right now, our water system wasn't built with any idea towards using reclaimed water or gray water at all. We have no ability to use irrigation without using potable water. And we have the type of lots and residents that want to use irrigation and have swimming pools. Now, if we were to restrict leak adjustments, then what will happen is the people right now that are using lots of water and that continue to use it, even with stage 1 or stage 2 restrictions, those folks are willing to pay, and they'll continue to do it. What will happen is the lower tier folks that are using irrigation will be the ones bearing the risk. So we'll say, if you use your irrigation system and you have a leak, you can't claim any kind of leak adjustment. If they have a leak, it can have significant disadvantage, but the folks that are already using 100,000 gallons a month, they're not going to care. They'll just continue to use it because they can afford it. So from an equity standpoint, I don't see how this does any good either. Where I think there's room is in the programming errors and controller malfunctions. I can see that as a possibility, because that's not a leak. I mean, that's an error, right? It's outside the water system. If we wanted to put something in about pools and water softeners, I think it needs to be more specific than just saying swimming pools. Because if someone has a crack in a line, that's still a leak. That's different than I just had excessive usage because I'm filling my swimming pool. So we need to be more specific. And then backflow devices and pressure reducing valves, I mean, we require them to be there. So if one of those valves malfunctions, again, that's still a leak. So I think the city's covering its interest if we just require that the leak gets stopped in a timely manner and then get repaired and have evidence of the repair in order to qualify for a leak adjustment. So that's kind of my opinion. I don't know that I would support any of those without tweaking it. But I'm also probably in the minority of that view. So I understand that. The bottom part, I'm not sure. The longer than 500-foot length, I think that's because most jurisdictions you compare it to have smaller lots and smaller houses. And so the folks that have those really long water lengths, again, those are the exceptional customer, not the average, although 500 is still a huge amount. So, maybe at some point there's a reason for that. And I'm not sure what we were trying to say in the other items, Roman numeral 8. I quite can't make that out when I read it if we're saying that's good or not good. But, I guess my overall thing is we either have leak adjustments or we don't. And if we do have them, we require the documentation and that be done in a timely manner. And I don't really care what the source of the leak was, as long as it gets stopped and as long as the leak adjustment is not completely waiving all responsibility for the leak. I mean, if we went down to 0 tier rate, that would not be fair. But at tier 2, they're still paying their average share of the cost of water. So I just, that's my view. I think if we wanted to put more restrictions on it, it means it needs to reflect a different rate structure. And so with what we have right now, I'm comfortable without any of these additions except possibly programmer and controller errors. So anyway, that's my comments.
Go ahead, sir.
Well, if we're going to go to programming errors, because we've had several of those in the past, or control of malfunctions, it comes to, is it a programming malfunction, or did the onboard computer just go haywire on you one day? And I think most people have come in and argued that the onboard computer in their irrigation system went haywire, and they programmed it correctly, but it just had a mind of its own. It started turning the system off and on. So that would have to be, I'm with you, I mean, it would have to be clarified, and I don't. And again, water softeners, we've had those discussions. Swimming pools, if you don't have a backflow preventer, which is one of my thumping things, I think if you don't have a backflow preventer, you're not in accordance with the ordinances in the first place. So I would say no to that, but we've had that discussion. I don't know what landscape water features are. I guess ponds,
Fountain.
Fountains, not a lot of those. Water and malfunctions due to backflow devices. Well, here again, I'm going. We require those just like pressure reducing valves, and you shouldn't be. I don't think you should be penalized because you got a backflow preventer, because you're supposed to have a backflow preventer. Maybe water loss associated with the construction of residential, I don't know what that means, buildings that occurred during the construction of blah, blah, blah. I don't recall having an adjustment due to that condition, but I don't think I object to that one too greatly. Again, the non-service line, I'm totally with my fellow commissioner on that.
Commissioner Stone, do you have anything to add on this? Okay. So I've been taking a lot of notes on what y'all are saying here, and so what I'm hearing from the group is kind of 4 or 5, Roman numerals 4 or 5, 6, and 7, and then the extra ones down there on the bottom, 8 and 9. Good. that it doesn't sound like anyone is in favor of any of those for the reasons that were already brought up. Is that fair?
I don't object to 7 too much, but we've never had a leak because of that issue that I recall, since I've been here.
I think there was one case a while back where, in a construction environment, there was excessive water use, and I think it came out that it was actually being stolen by somebody else, another contractor. So if we keep 7, I'd have no problem with loss associated during the construction, because that's on the contractor to take care of. I would have to clarify what we mean by the warranty period, because I don't think that should be on the customer. I mean, you might require submittal of a claim, and then as part of your evidence, whether or not they found it under warranty or not, you might require that. But if the contractor says, well, that break was not warranted, then they should be able to get a leak adjustment regardless of the time frame. So that would need to be clarified. But I'm with Commissioner Carmichael. I'm not too upset by 7 if we want to. And my problem with 4, other than I'll say, is also just in practicality. I don't know how our poor small water department would gather the evidence to support one way or the other on that one. So anyway.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to 4 and 5 here in just a minute. So for 7, I think the 1 year of is probably, that's the question mark you had, and if that can be struck out of there, are we more comfortable with 7?
I would be more comfortable with it. I think it's a pretty rare occurrence, but, could be.
Okay. All right. And looking at this here, so 5, we've talked about 5 multiple times, and, wait. So I've struck out 6, 8, and 9. Have we talked about 5 yet? Was that a no from everybody?
Well, we talked about it, but not in detail. I'm not in favor of it as currently written, because I think it's too vague.
I understand.
I agree with Commissioner Harshberger, but again, those are devices that we require by ordinance. And then to penalize somebody for a device, pressure reducing valve or a backflow device, because they installed it by code, I can't support that.
Another no. No on that one. All right. So item 4, as I'm looking through this, I think that is the last one that we have left, if my notes are correct. And I've heard maybe to the first 2 items, not the last item, but those first 2 items are kind of a bundled group, right? Because we can't really separate programming errors from controller malfunctions. If we were to keep that, we would want to keep both of those. But you came in loud and clear that you don't want any of this, I think.
Well, based on the way our system is set up and the administrative burden, I would prefer to not have it added. Try it the way it is for a while and see what happens would be my position. But I did say on 4, it's possible you could reword those first 2 items if that was important to the council. Because that, in a previous version, that was in there that, you couldn't have, programming errors. It's how do you prove it? So, yes, I think I'd rather have it be gone, but that's not one I'd go to the mat over, to put it that way.
Okay. So do you have some idea for extra words in here for 1 and 2? Is there a compromised version of the language that you'd be more comfortable with, first of all? Because you alluded to additional words that you'd want to put in there.
Now you're really trying to trap us. I think the words
Hey,
that are
I'm
in
the
the
one that's got to
document.
take this up, so.
Yeah, the words that are in the document as is require there to be a leak. A controller malfunction or programming error is not a leak. So I mean, I think we don't need it. But if you wanted to add clarification that water loss or excessive use occurring as a result of programming errors or controller malfunctions would not be done, then I think that would be okay as long as that was specified.
Got it.
I
I
just-
understand now.
Yeah. I would not do the water line, zone, valves, or sprinkler head unless we get to a system where we separately meter irrigation. Because right now, it's a judgment call, looking at the data, if that was irrigation or not. And we really can't separate out. If there's a leak, we can't really separate out the part that was irrigation from the part that wasn't. We just know there was high usage during that hour. So again, without a lot more ability to look at data and a staff that can go out and crunch numbers, I just don't see that it benefits us more than what we have now. I think the cost would be higher than it would be worth.
I understand. Commissioner Stone or Dr. Carmichael, any comments on 4?
No, I have none. I agree with what's been presented so far.
I agree also.
So, I'm sorry, agreeing with keeping that or striking the whole item? Because what I heard from the Vice Chair Harshberger was that he's not 100% comfortable with it, but would be willing to keep it with those 2 items in there with a bunch of caveats. So where are y'all at?
If we got to keep something, go for it. I think it's, I don't know. It's going to cause discussion in the future if we keep it. Was it a malfunction? Was it a programming error? Or if we keep them both and just, it's, I'm not going to go to the mat on that one either, so. And I'm not a fan of irrigation systems, so you can keep it as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, sir. Commissioner Stone.
I would keep the programming and controller error. The other ones would be kind of questionable.
Okay. So what I have off of all my notes here is for this recommendation from City Council to consider adding these things. The only changes that we would make to our previous proposal that we sent up last month would be item 4, the first 2 bullets, with a couple of caveats, or a couple of, I will mention to City Council when I present this about some of the concerns that y'all have had. I'll certainly bring that up there. And then item 7, 4, 5, 6. Item 7, as long as 1 year of is taken out of that. Everything else, for all the reasons that we've discussed before, we don't want to include. Am I summarizing what's going on correctly here?
I think so. On 4, instead of having it water loss or excessive use in lawn irrigation systems, including but not limited to, you could just say excessive use as a result of programming or irrigation programming errors or controller malfunctions, and just make it specific. Because if you've got not limited to, then now we're in a, since the paragraph says will not be granted, I think it should be something that we can hang our hat on. If you want to keep it, I would put it that way. And then I agree on 7, just get rid of the or within 1 year of the warranty period, and those would be the only changes. But I'm also fine with no changes whatsoever, would be my first choice.
So number 4, change to read excessive use in long irrigation systems as a result of programming errors or controller malfunctions. Did I get that right?
That was my recommendation. I don't know if that's right.
I'll concur with that.
Okay. All right, so I think the best way to do this, looking at you, Ms. Kane, to keep me honest here, is we have a motion to amend our leak adjustment proposal to City Council to include these 2 items as stated there, and then we can move forward with a presentation to council.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
If we're going to do this, I'd add, it wasn't on the list from council, but it kind of came up earlier today. So we have under item 7, the document right now, 7, Roman numeral 2. So basically it would say no water loss adjustment will be made if water loss resulted from customer's violation of ordinance number 54 and plumbing code adopted by the city. Again, I think that's sufficient because it's in ordinance 54, but for emphasis, if you want to, I might add including drought mitigation stage reductions as in other words, there's in some of those higher stages, you're supposed to turn things off, like some of these water features and things like that. So if they had excessive use due to a landscape water feature while we're under stage 3, then that's a violation, so that shouldn't be covered. It's already in there because it says ordinance 54, but I didn't know if you might be worth highlighting to people that our drought reduction, our drought mitigation plan, is part of that. In fact, I think at one point you're supposed to turn off autofills. I see you have a comment from the city administrators.
You would have to add ordinance 61, that is the drought management ordinance.
So are you in the base, you're in the base,
Yes. I guess what I'm saying is some of the things that the council was suggesting that were from other jurisdictions could be covered for us by just including in that ordinance 61 as one of the things that if you're in violation, you wouldn't get a leak adjustment.
what page of the ordinance are you on right now?
I was just using and what's in the packet, so I'd have to look it up.
It was,
Oh, I get it. I see 7.2. Thank you for the point out. Okay, so the summary of changes that I have to this, the proposal that is actually on the screens right now, is we have adding in the item 4 reworded to read excessive use in lawn irrigation systems as a result of programming errors or controller malfunctions. Adding item 7 of the recommendations from council, any water loss associated with the construction of residences or non-residential buildings that occurred during the construction or within the warranty period. And item, and then modify our original proposal to add ordinance 61 on 7, Roman numeral 2. Did I capture everything?
I think so. I thought we were going to strike the within the warranty period.
I thought we were just striking within 1 year. You want all of that during the construction period?
I think so, because the warranty is a separate issue.
Okay,
Unless we want to be in the business of investigating, the warranties from the homeowners.
okay, that's fair. I wasn't sure on that. So we're going to adopt item 7 to our leak adjustment recommendations. And it's going to say any water loss associated with the construction of residence or non-residential buildings that occur during the construction period. So what I will need is a motion to amend our leak adjustment process recommendations to City Council to add the comment about the excessive use of lawn irrigation systems, which I can read again if it's required, the one on construction, and adding ordinance 61.
So I will move that we forward to City Council amended recommendation for changes to ordinance 54 as you described, and following appropriate staff review.
So we have a recommendation to forward the changes as described after staff review to City Council. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a forward and a second. Any discussion, starting on the left? Any more discussion? Not from anybody? On the right? Are you good with the, okay. Everybody's good? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Unopposed. All right, that concludes item number 2 there, recommendations on the leak adjustment process. We're going to move on to Water Commission activities and projects. As we go through here, let me get back to my notes. All right, we've discussed many of the projects, some of the things that are related to many of the projects that were going on there. I don't think we had anything for planning ordinances or education. From anybody? Good. Nothing on water rates. I did mention in the email that was sent by that we had forwarded from the city staff about strategic planning, and I might have mentioned this last meeting. I can't exactly remember. We did talk about perhaps looking at any supply issues that we might have from building out. I talked to the city engineer about it, and the bottom line is that is very, very difficult to forecast and difficult to actually figure out exactly what the demands on the water system might be in the future based on because there's so much variability in the construction that could happen in the commercially zoned areas. So essentially, the engineer said you could try, but it's pretty impossible because your circle of error or whatever it might be is just going to be so large, it's probably not worth your time. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying, but that's where I'm at right now. Is I got a do-over from the engineer, and nice try. So the next one was the last one on our projects was commercial water rates, and Dr. Carmichael, I think you had some discussion there.
I have a little. I'm not sure where to start, but, and I'm not sure this is water rates. I think, and going to where I started rambling last meeting, that if new construction provides an approved water source source of the city, then I would propose that they be allowed a reduction in their water bill for, say, a 5-year period. Following that, and we can discuss that further, up to the amount of water they bring to the city. If they exceed that during the year, then they would lose that rebate or reduction. New construction is not provided water source of the city, and this would take apparently a bit more work. And where I was rambling before with other cities, one notable one, the city of Dallas, that in the mid-50s, the city of Dallas City Council purchased the water rights from Dallas to the Red River and to the east to Bonham, I think, and then developed water reservoirs and water sources for everyone in the area. And now if you buy water from the city of Dallas, if you're within the city limits, you pay one rate. If you're outside the city limits, you pay a rate that rolls up all the cost for construction of reservoirs, development of pipelines, and all of the sources associated with that water. So I would propose that for discussion in the future, and if we can work it, that anyone who does not bring, and we may be, I think we'll be faced with this situation, an approved water source of the city, that the facility be limited to the amount of water determined by the same formula to calculate the water to be provided to the city and reviewed by the Water Commission. And in addition, the water allowed shall be billed for use at a rate that incorporates the city's cost to develop, store, supply, and produce the water. So historical cost to sink Trinity wells, Edwards wells, water storage facilities, supply lines, along with any costs that the city might incur from a city aquifer authority in the future, that be rolled up into a rate that then would be applied to those who do not bring water rights to the city. In addition, I would propose that all facilities on an annual basis review their water use equipment, whatever that might be, and submit a report to either the Water Commission or the Planning and Zoning Commission by the 1st of January of each year. And the report include a report of all high-use water utilities and a plan to replace those facilities, be they be sinks, toilets, janitor closets, sinks that don't have automatic shut-off within the next calendar year. So they replace 10% of those each year. And that the whichever commission reviews that report and approves it or makes changes. And in the short, that's what I've come up with for now.
So let's go ahead and first start off with just some quick questions. Do you want to go first, Vice Chair? I keep picking on you.
I know, it's fair, it's okay. I don't know that I have enough information right now to ask intelligent questions. I'll have to go back, because I know there's other ordinances that talk about what developers have to provide, and I don't remember the details on them right now, so I would think going forward, we'd have to, cross-check that. But again, my concern would simply be the size of the administrative burden that any new reporting would put on the city. I mean, I couldn't even get data on how to determine the cost of water, so I think it would be potentially difficult. So we'd have to kind of look at that a little bit. But anyway, I will come up with better questions for next time.
Commissioner Stone?
No, not right now.
Okay. So, Dr. Carmichael, after thinking about that, I'm not opposed to where we're going on this. I think there's probably something here that that might help the city in the future. I think two big questions that we have going forward was, first of all, what other ordinances say? So if the subcommittee can go through and check some of the other, like the planning and zoning ordinance, I forget the number.
13.
13? So check out ordinance 13, and I know there's some developmental stuff in the back of ordinance 54, and I'm ashamed to say I don't have it all memorized, but if you could just double check that there's nothing in there also. Yep. And then you talked about calculation of infrastructure costs, and that might be a good idea, but I just don't know how we would get there from here. So a little bit more detail on actually how some of that would happen there. And maybe we can get you Samuel's, or you can work with Stephen or Samuel, our city engineer, to see if there's any other, if this has been done anywhere before in a small town, in a small system like ours, that perhaps we can get some additional data. Then we can come back next month. If you could shoot this out to us, if you get this a week or two prior, then we can get Michelle to send it out, and then I bet everybody will read it thoroughly and come with loads of questions for you. Right? Is that a good way forward? Do we like that?
That's that's an open-ended question. No, I'll do a little more research and see what we can do. But I think we're going to have to, in the future, address the issue. And I'm not sure where we stand on the issue of, can we require water rights to be brought to the city?
Yeah, the
But I'm not
city's
even
still
sure
working on that.
I'm not sure they exist at this point anyhow, so I don't know where you'd get them from. So the ordinance may be moot at this point, but no, I'll look at it.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other Water Commission activities and projects that I missed? I think I got everything on the list.
You did. There was at one point the health and infrastructure, and I'm not sure where it got rolled up, but I just want to point out that the last water master plan was 2016. So it should have been out in 2021. We're getting near the end of 2022. The engineers have been overcome by street widening projects and other issues. But that's one of the places where those infrastructure costs are estimated. So as we were talking with the engineer, that's another thing to bring up, kind of where are we at with that.
That goes in the strategic planning subcommittee. I was focusing on sources instead of the water master plan, but that clearly is in there, and that's myself and Commissioner Halteman. So I'll talk to him about it next month. I wish you would have been on that subcommittee and turn it right back on you, but I know. Anything else on projects or anything? Great. Okay, that concludes Water Commission activities and projects. I think we're moving on here. We made some recommendations, and we are on to future agenda items. Any inputs on future agenda items for next month's meeting? Going once. Okay. The next meeting will be August 16th, 2022 at 6 p.m. here in the City Hall. Then we're now to item 6, citizen comment period. Are there any citizens who would like to speak? No? You're good? Excellent. All right. That concludes everything that we have on the agenda for tonight. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned at 7:05 p.m. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.